Now, the constructive resettlement framework has three main parts to it. The first part is called constructive casework, and that's an overall model for organising casework in and outside of custody with children and young adults. It requires that casework is formed into two distinct parts. One is personal support, where you help the child through their development of identity. You guide their identity development from pro-offending to pro-social. Within the personal support, you might ask, say, 4 different questions or stages of questions for the child. First of all, you might try and understand with the child what elements of the way they think about themselves and their place in the world is allowing offending or may allow offending in the future. Secondly, you may well work with the child to think about what are their strengths, what are their interests, what ways and elements of their identity and their interests could you build upon to make it much more pro-social? What could you develop with them? Thirdly, you might want to think about who they want to be in the future, not what they want to be or what they want to do, but who they want to be in the future. What kind of person, what sort of job would they see themselves doing? What kind of family would they be? Just where do they see themselves and who do they see themselves being in the future? And the fourth part of personal support would be about setting out a route with them to the future. What do we need to put in place in order to get them there? Where do they need to go to in order to get to that endpoint, that pro-social identity that they've spotted? The second element of constructive casework would be the structural support. Now, we've quite often in the past rushed to that structural support. Oh, the child needs accommodation. We need to get them there. The child needs training, needs education. Right, let's get them there. But that's no good without the personal support, without identifying where the child wants to go, who they want to be. Well, then the structural support might be wrong. So the personal support element of constructive casework should inform the structural support element. And the structural support is about trying to do what we can to get rid of the barriers to positive outcomes for children, the problems that they face, and also to put down the road markers, the paving blocks, if you like, for children to get to wherever they want to be. So it might be setting them up in the right accommodation to get to their endpoint. It might be to get the right college course for them that we know will help them lead to the particular job that they want to see themselves in the future. It may well also be about getting them into leisure activities to help them in their hobby, because somebody's leisure activity, what they do in their adolescence, really does help their makeup for the way they see themselves. The second main part of the constructive resettlement framework is what's become known as the 5 C's. And they're 5 characteristics of effective practice, of a support package for children. You could use it as a checklist, actually, to see whether your support matches up to what we know is going to be constructive and help children to develop their identity positively. What are the 5 C's then? The first one is constructive. And that simply means focusing on this identity development, being future-oriented, being strengths-based, being motivated. The second C is co-creative, because you can't do youth justice or resettlement to a child. It has to be done with that child. It's the child's identity, isn't it? It's the child's route to a pro-social identity. So whatever you do, whatever support you put in place has to be co-created. Any plans has to be co-created with the child and their informal supporters. The third C is customized. If every child's identity is different and every child's journey to a future pro-social identity is unique, well, you have to recognize that each support package must be customized. And also, if every child's identity is different, well, that shows you the importance of diversity as well. Sometimes in the past, we may have been a little bit apologetic or defensive about diversity, but we must understand that elements of diversity whether it's gender, ethnicity, disability, sexuality, all aspects of diversity are absolutely central to somebody's identity, therefore must be central to support on helping them develop pro-social identity. The fourth C is consistent. Identity shift and development for a child must be the focus of everybody involved. We must all be singing from the same hymn sheet. It's no good if some people are projecting messages about the child's identity which undermine the particular route that we've identified they need to take. So everybody really needs to be consistently, every agency needs to be looking in the same direction as far as a child's identity. And this identity development must be the aim of every agency involved. And the fifth C is coordinated. If there are different needs and vulnerabilities that the child has in order to develop their identity, then we know that there are different agencies that are going to be involved. And we've already said that the support needs to be consistent. So the chances are that needs to be coordinated. Coordinated is the fifth C. Coordinated through this effective, constructive casework and through communication between agencies. The third element of the constructive resettlement framework is identity awareness. We need to make every interaction count, and we need to be aware of the messages that the child is giving us about the way they see themselves and their place in the world, and the messages that we as practitioners, well, and supporters more generally, including informal supporters, give the child about themselves and who they are. Because the messages that the child gives us can give us really good clues about the way they're seeing themselves that would feed into personal support. What is it that the child is telling us about themselves in the clothing they wear, in the language that they use, in the things that they talk about, their particular interests that they talk about, their friends that they talk about? What are the messages that they're giving us about the way they see themselves that may be conducive to offending? Or different clues that they can give us to latch onto to really develop maybe some of their interests and help them think about themselves in that particular way in the future. But we've also got to be really aware of the messages that we are giving the children in every interaction we have with them. Are we underlining their positive identity development, or is there something that we say or do that undermines that positive identity development? The way we're speaking to them, the way we reflect our view of them in those interactions. And that includes all processes and events that may be disrupting their positive elements of their identity as well. Are there things that we do that may disrupt that? For instance, when they go into custody, the induction process, does that disrupt the way they see themselves positively at all? What are the building blocks for developing a child's identity then? Well, when we looked at the development of children's identity, we found that there are three main building blocks by which that identity gets developed into pro-social identity. The first is activities. So organised leisure or any other kind of activities that allow us to try on an identity. So playing football, for instance, isn't just about occupying our time. It's allowing us to think of ourselves as a sports person, maybe think of ourselves as a team player, maybe think of ourselves as a leader. The second element is interactions that foster and reinforce identity development, that help underline who we are. People saying positive things about us, saying, yeah, you're a really good lad, or you're really understanding, you're a good listener, etc., etc. Interactions. And thirdly, roles that we take on. They may be formal roles like a professor or a student, or maybe a particular job that you've taken inside the custodial institution, for instance. Or they may be informal roles like a girlfriend, a boyfriend, a partner, a father, a dispute broker, or maybe you're just the guy at home who fixes the IT when it goes wrong in the family. So activities, interactions and roles, or AIR. And it's everybody's job to help give children fresh air to help develop and shift their identity. So because we know that consistent is one of the 5 C's, it's really important that agencies work together as a network, as a team, as a consortium to ensure that children are worked with consistently, that they get the same message from every officer or professional that they're working with, and that every part of the package of support really adds up to help move them along the route to their pro-social identity. That you don't have some agencies that are undermining that development, that are perhaps reinforcing to the child that they're an offender, that they're somebody in trouble, that they're a problem, that they're a bunch of risk factors. We can't have that if we want to help children develop positively and have effective resettlement, which means that they and everybody else is safer in the long run.